Okay, we're entering our last section of class. We're going to talk about two super important principles in this last section. The first is the capital asset pricing model. We call it the CAPM. The capital asset pricing model was derived by a man named Bill Sharp. Actually, there's some other folks that probably should have also gotten credit, but Bill Sharp derived the capital asset pricing model and actually ended up winning the Nobel Prize in economics for this derivation. The CAPM is widely used in practice. We'll show you some data, a survey of almost 400 CFOs that use the CAPM. Almost out of the 400-ish CEOs, 75% of them almost always or always use the capital asset pricing model when evaluating investment projects. Investors also use the CAPM. So this is something that has been widely used in finance. The formula is there on the screen there. You don't need to understand that formula right now. But basically, let me explain what this means and why it's so important. So this is the expected return that you might get if you were to buy a stock, okay? This is some measure of the risk-free rate. There must be some asset in the world that if you hold it, it will pay you a slight return, but it's risk-free, okay? And so the RF is the risk-free rate, and this is the expected return on the market. And in the CAPM, the only thing that matters is this beta, all right? Let me show you. If I go here to Apple, this is Apple's stock price. Apple's having a decent day. It's recovering for the horrific sell-off from yesterday. But if I'm looking at some statistics here for Apple, I see a beta of 1.29, okay? So what that means is, and this beta is widely reported. It's available on Google Finance, Bloomberg reports the beta, Yahoo Finance, CNBC reports it. This beta is a measure of risk. It's a measure of what we call systematic risk or market-wide risk, risk that is not diversifiable. So if I go back here to this formula, the only thing that matters in determining the expected return for a particular stock is the firm's exposure to market-wide risk. Okay, Apple's beta is 1.29, right? I would multiply that by the expected return on the market over the risk-free rate. Okay, and basically what the CAPM is telling us is how much exposure does a firm have to systematic risk, and if we can measure that correctly, then we can get what the expected return is. Okay, the CAPM is super important. We'll derive the CAPM, we'll use the CAPM in a bunch of different problems in this section. I'll work some of those problems with videos, and then you'll have an opportunity to work those problems on your own. I provided solutions to those as well. Now, the second important principle we'll talk about in this section of the class is the cost of capital. Okay, so the WACC stands for the weighted average cost of capital. All right, and this is how you would go about calculating the WACC. We're going to explain this very carefully. So if you don't understand, some of you are going to think about dropping the class right now, but don't. It's really straightforward. Basically, the cost of capital is not a cost that firms face that they have to pay in dollar terms. The cost of capital is the cost in return terms. You can think of the cost of capital as the return that we have to earn on any investment project. I'm talking from the firm's perspective. The return that we have to earn on any investment project, it's the return required by those who've provided us capital. Who's provided us capital? Well, equity holders for one. So E here stands for equity holders and debt holders for another, right? So we have to earn at least enough return on any investment project to be able to pay back our debt holders and shareholders that have provided us capital. The cost of capital is super important. You've seen this. Remember the first day of class, I drew this up on the board. And on the board, basically what I said is that the cost, say we invest in a marketing campaign that costs $25 million today, it'll produce $7, $10, and $12 million in each of the next 3 years. And the question that I posed the first day of class was, should we invest in this project? All right. Now, 14, 15 weeks later, we're finally able to answer this problem. All right. We're going to Recall our discussion that first day of class. $7 million 1 year from today is not worth $7 million today. So what we have to do is we have to discount or take the present value of each of these future cash flows back to time zero. In other words, we have to get the present value of these future cash flows and compare it to the cost to determine whether or not this project is profitable. Now, what rate do we discount these future cash flows back by? We discount it back by the cost of capital. We discount the future cash flows back by the WACC. Okay? So in this section, you're also going to learn how to calculate the WACC. This will be super important for those of you who are going to work in corporate finance, and even more important for those of you who have to take a corporate finance class next semester. So anyway, hopefully this is helpful. Enjoy this last section.